Welcome to Momming as a Millennial, the podcast where we explore the intersection of tradition and modern parenting. Have you ever felt overwhelmed trying to balance being a mom with your professional aspirations, all while dealing with side-eye from your parents who think you're doing it wrong? Me too. I'm your host, Christine Gerizzo, a journalist, blogger, and proud mama of 2 young children. I'm so glad you're here with me. Together, we can navigate the complexities of millennial motherhood and find what resonates with our true, authentic selves. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Momming as a Millennial. On today's episode, it's just going to be me. I don't have any guests, and I thought because now this is episode 12, and I've been producing these episodes for about 6 months, and a lot of work has gone into before I launch, so really I've been doing this almost close to a year, and I just thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of stop, especially with last episode being so emotionally heavy and draining for me. I really wanted to make this a little bit lighter and then ask for questions from you listeners and see what you wanted to hear about and what you wanted me to answer. So I put that out on Instagram, asked for some questions. I got some great questions back, and I'm going to go over a couple of them today. So let's get into the questions. The first one that I received: is there something that you wish you could change about your parenting? And I laugh because yes, everything. I wish I could change everything. No, the immediate answer is obviously I think I could do better in all aspects of my parenting, and I want to be better in all aspects of my parenting. But if I had to narrow it down to one thing, I would definitely say having more patience. I try so hard to be patient, and my children are in that age where they are pushing buttons and testing boundaries. And really, I've noticed that when I stop and take a breath, get down on their level, and really try to, speak to them calmly, that's when I get them to cooperate. And if I lose my patience, not only do I regret that later, but it just makes things worse, and then things escalate, and then the tantrum continues, and things take 10 times longer to calm down and get where we need to be. So I would definitely say, if I could, I would be more patient. And we've all been there when you just can't ask them to do the same thing for the 10th time. It's that tea kettle where you're just getting hotter and hotter, and the steam is building up and up, and then finally it just blows. And I'm not perfect. I've said this before. I've definitely lost my cool on my kids. I always regret it. I always feel bad afterwards. And I wish I would have just hung on for a little bit more and did the breathing exercises that everybody talks about, or walked away, just left the room for a minute and gained my composure and come back. But it's never anything that you can take back. You can't go back in time and reel back in that explosion. And they usually don't let me forget it either. Like, my kids will say to me, "Mommy, do you remember that time you got so mad when you were trying to put us to bed and we wouldn't go to sleep and you yelled at us from downstairs?" Yes, of course I remember, and I'm so glad that you do too, because that makes me feel like a terrible mom. But I will say, the one thing I always do is I always apologize to the kiddos. If I raise my voice or I act short with them, I always say sorry after the fact. I feel that that is far more important than whether or not I was able to stay calm in a situation. If I can show them that parents make mistakes too, and when we do, we say sorry and we try to change for the future, and we can model that behavior, then not all is lost in those situations. And hopefully they can learn through my mistakes. That is not something that I experienced growing up. I feel as though, previous generations had the mentality that grown-ups are always right, kids are always wrong. No matter how badly they act, I've never heard an apology from my parents or my grandparents. And it reminds me of the scene from the Matilda movie where her dad is scolding her and he says, "I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it." I feel like that was my experience. So that is something that I try hard to do differently in my parenting with my children. I don't want to replicate that behavior. And, grown-ups are wrong a lot as well. So I want to make sure that my kids see that we do make mistakes and that we can own up to them and say we're sorry. So that was a great question. Patience, patience, patience. All right. So the next question I got: why are people intentionally mean? Ugh, this one is so tough. When I read this question, I immediately thought of Tara Mohr. She is the author of the book Playing Big, and I absolutely love the book. I've read it a couple times. She actually has a Playing Big course that I've taken, and that is the reason that I started this podcast, is after going through that course and learning all the techniques and things that she provides within her Playing Big body of work. Then I decided that I was going to take the leap and launch this podcast. So I really do owe a lot to that book, to that body of work, and to Tara Mohr. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. But all of that aside, she has this concept that she shares called unhooking from praise and criticism. Essentially, it's a framework for handling and understanding the feedback you get from others. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because a lot of the times when people are mean, that's feedback that you're getting from other people. Tara is referring to the feedback that you get about maybe your performance at work, or, the work that you're producing, like this podcast or my blog, for example, components of your Playing Big journey, as she calls it, stuff like that. Essentially, what she says is that the feedback or the criticism or praise tell us about the people that are providing the feedback. It doesn't tell us anything about ourselves. I'm going to share her blog post about this topic in the show notes, but I did want to just read something from it. She says, "The point is not to become disconnected from feedback and to have such a thick skin that we can't feel it or hear it. It's to become unhooked by it and not be run by it. So the point is to be run by our own wisdom, our own instincts, our own thoughts, our own beliefs, and to be able to use the feedback effectively in the service of our callings and our aspirations along the way." So this is my podcast being one of my callings. "The goal is not to have others' ideas about us distract us or silence us or take us on an emotional roller coaster." So I think that's really powerful. When someone provides feedback on your performance at work, for example, it's indicative to what they are thinking and feeling. It tells us what their expectations are for you, for your role. Maybe it's influenced by what their manager has shared with them, what they've heard from another colleague, or it could be influenced by how they're feeling that day. But the key point here is that it tells us about them, not us. So I just wanted to share a couple examples about feedback that I've received in the past that I've really taken to heart and then realized it wasn't about me. One of my previous managers, she was constantly giving me feedback that I needed to speak up in meetings. I needed to make my voice heard. I needed to take up more space. I needed to give ideas and help brainstorm and come up with solutions and share my ideas in every single meeting, have something to say. And that's not me. I struggle with that. I struggle with speaking up. I know, can you believe it? I'm here doing a podcast. But in a professional setting, I really struggle sharing my ideas. I'm always afraid of that criticism or what others are going to think of it. So while I was doing really well in my role and everything else was going good, she kept giving me this feedback, and it was really starting to affect my performance reviews because I just wouldn't speak up. If I wasn't saying anything, she would talk to me about it later. I didn't want to just say something to say something because I really hate those people in the meetings who are just talking to hear themselves talk. But in hindsight, looking back, she was the only female executive in a room full of men. And the way she got there was speaking up. She shared her thoughts. She took up space. She made sure her voice was heard. And that's how she was getting ahead, because she had to when she was the only female in a room full of men. So she was just providing me with the guidance that she thought was going to take me to the next level of my career. She was trying to mentor me and help me. And that's why that feedback kept coming up for me. And it was such a consistent point of conflict for the two of us, because she desperately wanted to share what had worked for her with me. Another example I wanted to share was when I first started my blog and I was getting ready to launch it. I actually sent it to one of my grad school professors, and I just wanted to get her opinion because she'd been in the industry for a while. Say, hey, what do you think? What do you think about this content? Would that resonate with somebody? Do you like the look and feel of the website? She came back with a lot of notes, and right off the bat, I looked at her feedback and I thought, I'm not going to do any of this. None of this resonates with my mission and what I'm trying to achieve. And then I started to second guess myself because she is in the industry. She does know what is going to get somebody's attention or what is going to get somebody to click on something or read a blog post. But as I started to filter through the feedback, at this point I had experienced Tara Mohr's Playing Big book, and I understood this concept of unhooking from praise and criticism. So I was going through her feedback and really noticing that it tied to her experiences as a magazine executive. So it was all very magazine editorial feedback of, I should have a mommy of the month and focus on them and feature them in one of my blog posts and see what they're saying. And that feedback just didn't fit with my concept and what I was going for. And I really appreciate that she took the time to go through that and share that with me. And she did make some comments on the style of my website, which I actually did take into account and change. But as far as the editorial, it just wasn't going to fit with what I was doing. But I see that that was completely about her experiences working in magazines and why she was offering that. So I'm extremely grateful that she provided that feedback. But again, you have to kind of sift through things and see what's authentic for you, what resonates with you, and then take it or leave it. So that's a lot of stuff I just said. And I want to get back to the question of why somebody would be intentionally mean. And I think you just apply this same concept. So their behavior tells us about them, not us. Personally, I think people are mean for a variety of reasons. This is not based in science or anything other than my own musings. But underneath it all, I feel like there's some sort of unresolved emotional pain that could lead to maybe lashing out and then a lack of accountability. So when people say and do hurtful things, I think we can, for the most part, surmise that they are just in some sort of pain. They have unresolved feelings or emotions about something. Maybe they feel rejected by you or jealous about something in your life or that you're doing. Maybe they're struggling with low self-esteem or insecurity. Sometimes people are mean or hurtful because you are different from them. So this I did a little bit of research on. And from a psychology perspective, social identity theory argues that humans have a basic psychological need for positive distinctiveness. So what this means is that people have a need to feel unique from others in a positive way. And as humans, we naturally form groups and we want to be part of a group. So this need for positive distinctiveness transcends to those groups that we belong to. That is, we tend to view our group that we're in or our in-group favorably, and we view out-groups or the groups that we're not a part of or that we don't belong to less favorably. So as a result, people may say or do mean things to the people who are outside of their group because they don't look at them favorably. They may feel that you don't belong or you don't think or believe the same things as them, and it's easier for them to pass judgment. And this could extend to cultural differences. So if you're from different cultures, there may be some clashing or something that's extremely timely because I'm actually recording this episode on Election Day, political differences. And I think a lot of us have come to experience that as of late. But in the spirit of, being transparent and taking a look in the mirror, I was thinking back to times when I have lashed out at somebody or said something mean. And I can say that in those times I was upset, angry, hurt by something that they have done. It was times when I was feeling insecure about something. And the things that I said and did were not about the people that I said them to. They were about me and my pain and what I was going through, my unresolved issues. So I think that is what a lot of other people are experiencing as well. So all that being said, it still sucks when somebody says something mean to you or does something mean to you. So how do we deal with that? How do we get past these things? We know it has nothing to do with us. Okay, we just talked about that. It says all about them. It says nothing about us. And while we can hope that maybe one day they'll come to us and we can have an honest conversation and, talk about what they're going through or what they're upset about and work things out, that may not happen. And if that doesn't happen, I think you can be resolute in the fact that you did nothing wrong. And you just have to keep telling yourself that. That is their cross to bear. It's their issue. You don't need to hold on to it. You can let it go. You didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, that's easier said than done. It takes a lot of practice and, unfortunately, a lot of heartbreak along the way. But I will say that this concept has been very helpful when trying to understand how my mom can say such mean things to me. It's something that I spoke about in the last episode, and it was very emotional, and I'm not even going to go back there. but I'm finally in a place where I can let it roll off my back. Of course it still hurts, like don't get me wrong, but I can walk away from it and it doesn't eat away at me for days like it used to. And honestly, I am in a place now where I've started to feel a little bit of compassion toward her because it must suck to be in pain all the time and not know how to process it or work through it, or maybe not even have the desire to process it or work through it. I genuinely feel bad that that's the situation that she's in, and it can't be easy. And I can only hope that one day her and I can reconcile and we can work through these things together. But yeah, I hope that helps. That's a tough question. And I know we all deal with that in our lives from time to time. So I hope that information helps. All right. So the next question I got is, how do you avoid getting resentful towards your husband? And this makes me laugh because I don't avoid it. Like obviously it happens. It definitely happens. Not all the time. And typically when I notice that I might be getting a little resentful or I'm feeling unappreciated, it's because I'm just on overload for what is happening at that time. There's so much that we have to do. It's that unpaid labor of motherhood that I spoke about many episodes ago. It's making the doctor's appointments, making sure that they go to the dentist, washing all of the lunch boxes and water bottles, packing the lunches, making sure they did their homework, packing the backpacks for the next day, washing the clothes. My son just had a birthday, so making sure that we have his gifts for him, that they're wrapped, that he has his birthday party and there's an invitation and a matching cake and the balloons and all the things. I mean, there is a million things that we are working on all the time and getting through in addition to our full-time jobs. So, of course, it's going to be overwhelming at times and we're going to feel a little bit resentful as if we're doing the brunt of the work. And this is a very busy time of year for us and my family. So I think it's easy for me to get caught up in all this stuff and look at my husband and be like, why aren't you helping more? Like, why didn't you do that? Why did I have to do all this stuff? But what I try to do instead, and again, I'm not perfect, but I just over communicate with him. When things are amping up, I tell him, I'm going to need you to do this. I'm going to need you to take care of that. I communicate what I'm doing. We take a look at what's on my plate. Can you take any of this off? And I noticed that with my husband, I've learned I need to be extremely specific, hoping that he sees what I'm doing and he's going to say, oh, she looks like she's really busy. I'm just going to step in and do this, or dropping hints and seeing if he picks up on them. It just doesn't work for us. He's not in the weeds of all those little things that I mentioned like I am. And that's okay. Like we balance each other out that way and that works for us. But I can't expect him to just proactively step up and save the day. So the first thing I do is I communicate. I over-communicate. Communication is key. And then when an issue does arise, and it will, I mean, that's just life, I can feel myself getting resentful. I just make sure to address it right away. Sitting on these issues or letting them fester, it only makes the situation worse in my experience. So, after the kids are in bed, we'll sit on the couch, make sure the TV's off, phones are down, and we can talk about how, I didn't feel supported, or maybe I wish he would have stepped in over here and helped with this thing over there. And I always try to acknowledge everything he does do because he is an extremely supportive partner. And he cooks us dinner like practically every night. Like I wouldn't trade that for the world. So I want to make sure that, I'm recognizing the effort that he's putting in. And I'm making sure that he realizes that we do value him. I value him. I appreciate his partnership. I don't ever want him to think I'm taking him for granted, but there are going to be times when I just need a little bit more effort. And he's actually really receptive to these conversations. He prefers it. He wants me to tell him exactly what he needs. He doesn't want to be guessing. He doesn't want to get it wrong. So I think it's really about figuring out what works with you and your partner and how you communicate and how you can get ahead of these things, or how, you talk about them after the fact and make sure that you're on the same page. The last thing I wanted to say about this is just to never hold a grudge. When something happens or you get in an argument, I feel like it's so easy to pull up that mental checklist in your head of all the things that your partner has done wrong in the past year, or every time you can remember where they dropped the ball and you felt unsupported. But that is the absolute last thing that you want to do when, addressing a new situation, a new problem, is rehash the old. While you might think it's helpful in the moment to validate your feelings because it shows that this is not the first time this has happened and you are right to be angry because he's done this to you before, whatever the case may be, it's just not going to help anything. It's only going to make your partner feel worse, probably than they already do. And it's going to show them that you didn't forgive them before and you didn't move on like you said you did. It'll put doubt in their head and make them wonder if they can take you seriously when you say everything is okay and you make up and move on. It'll put them on edge because they never know, what are you going to bring up from the past or what are you going to throw in their face? So yeah, nothing good can come of holding a grudge. Always use kind words with each other when you're arguing or trying to work through something because that's just stuff that you can't take back. If you're too upset to talk things through, my suggestion would be wait until you calm down or take a couple minutes, go for a walk around the block, whatever the case may be. And then once you're calm, come back and have that respectful conversation so that you're not angry while you're talking these things through. Because essentially that relationship is so sacred. It's the priority above all things, above your children. Your relationship comes first. So just hold on to that thought when you're feeling angry or resentful about something and you want to have that conflict. All right. This is a fun one. The next question I got is, what are your favorite family traditions? Birthdays. I know I mentioned this before, but I love a birthday and we just got to have a birthday. So it's amazing. Even though I don't have a kitchen right now, we did it at my in-laws and it was so much fun. And it's not a party unless there's lots and lots of balloons. So that's one of my favorite traditions. But something else that I thought of recently was something that my parents actually did with us is after your birthday, we got sat down on the couch or in a chair, and then all of the presents that we got were put around us and we took a picture. And I just think that is a really cool thing to do. And it's something that I've started doing with the kids so we can look back every year and say, oh, that's where you got that article of clothing, or that's when you got that toy. It was at that birthday party. That's a really fun thing I think you can do. And then I would say my other favorite thing to do as a family is get a real Christmas tree. Growing up, I always wanted a real Christmas tree and it just wasn't in the cards for us. So once we had our son, we started the tradition every Black Friday or the Saturday after Thanksgiving, one of those days, we go out and we pick out our tree. Full disclosure, we don't chop it down ourselves, but we do go out to the Christmas tree farm and we get to pick out our tree and we make a whole day of it. And yeah, it's a really fun thing to do. And it's funny, I make fun of my husband because every year our tree is getting bigger and bigger. And so this year I'm going to bring a tape measure with us because he always tells me it's not as big as I think it is. And then we get it home and eventually these trees are not going to fit in our house. So this year the tape measure is coming with us, but we will definitely be doing that on Black Friday. And I can't wait. It's probably my favorite thing of the year. So this last question I got, I'm actually not going to answer here because I think it deserves its own episode, but I just did want to raise it. How does attachment theory factor into my parenting decisions? I love this question because the answer is I have no idea, and I get to do some research about it and really dig into it. I did start looking into it and it's very involved. There's a lot of stuff that we could talk about. So I think it's going to be great to be its own episode. And I do plan on doing that in the future. So I really appreciate that question. And I am going to do it justice and give it the time that it deserves in its own episode. So I did just want to address that here. I think that's going to be it for me today. It's going to be nice and short and sweet. I want to say thank you to those of you who sent in questions. I really appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed this episode and just kind of me talking off the cuff about some things that I think are important. Let me know either way if you like this. If you don't like it, DM me on Instagram, or you can go to my website, contemplativemama.com, and message me through there. I love to hear what you want to talk about. I love to hear from you if things are resonating with you, if there's something different that you want to talk about. If you want to come on the podcast, let me know. I'm pretty much open to everything. So I appreciate everyone who is listening. I appreciate everyone who engages. Make sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode, and continue to share with the people who you think would find this interesting. And I did want to just put one more plug that I finally got on TikTok, so head over to TikTok and check me out there. Same handle as Instagram, Contemplative Mama 1. All right, I just want to say thank you all for listening, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Momming as a Millennial. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend or on social. You can find more from me at contemplativemama.com. Until next time.